So, Social Security, as it currently is constructed, is a pretty broken system. Today, I want to talk to you about my solution. I'm really excited about this idea. I hope you'll give it a listen and give it some serious thought. Freedom funds. What are those? How would those work? How would that help Americans to be able to reach retirement with a much better chance of retiring successfully? We've got to start here with Social Security, understanding why it is falling short and why it is not a good long-term sustainable program. I talked about this a bit in episode 155. If you go back a few episodes, I broke down Social Security. There's a lot of people who are kind of sounding the alarm and they're worried about, is Social Security even going to be there for me? There's a lot of people my age that kind of look at Social Security and they think, I'm just going to act as if it's not even going to be there when I retire. Now, I'll be first to say I don't think Social Security is going away. I think it still will be there when I get to retirement age. The problem is at its current level, at its current trajectory, it's just unsustainable, and there are some changes that we're going to have to make. So let me first of all just lay out the case for why Social Security, as it is not a good, is not sufficient in and of itself to help Americans retire successfully. And then I want to talk about where freedom funds come into this picture. So let's lay out the shortcomings of Social Security here for a second. Currently, on average, Americans get about 40% of their pre-retirement income through Social Security. So if somebody was making $5,000 a month before they retired, their benefit from Social Security might be about $2,000. So you can see right there, it's just not sustainable. It's not something you can live off of. You have to have other income, whether that's through savings in your 401k, rental income, a pension. There has to be some other way that you're earning income to make ends meet, because 40% of your pre-retirement income is not going to cut it for most people. And by the way, the higher your income, the less of a percentage, because the way the Social Security benefits work is the higher your income is, the less benefit you're getting for each additional dollar of taxes that you're paying into it. So for lower income people, they might get more than 40% of their pre-retirement income, but for higher income people, they're probably going to get way less than 40%. So it just depends on the person. But how this works is we take from our payroll, and we pay into Social Security taxes. 6.2% as an employee, 6.2% is matched by your employer. So that's a total of 12.4%. So 12.4% of your income, of your paycheck, is going into Social Security. And then what happens with that money? Well, basically, the government takes that money and turns right around and pays out the people who are currently retired and eligible to collect. And the way it is currently is we actually don't have enough coming in taxes to pay all the people who are supposed to collect. Thankfully, we do have a trust fund of excess money that has been set aside for years now, and we take money out of that to close the gap. The bad news is that in about 8 to 9 years, that trust fund will be depleted. And that's where we come to a very difficult decision. What do we do then? Because once that trust fund runs out and we don't have that extra money to meet our shortfall, then we only have about 83% of the benefits that are supposed to be collected coming in taxes. So if we just stay on our current trajectory, we just have to tell all the Social Security people who are collecting Social Security, sorry, you're about to take a 17% cut on your benefits. And I just don't see that happening, because that would be kind of like political suicide if either side allowed that to happen. So something's going to happen. We're probably going to keep kicking the can down the road here and only address it when it's like, we're almost to that red light. But it's probably going to be one of these two things. Either we're going to increase the Social Security taxes, maybe bump it up to like 7% instead of 6.2%, or we're going to push back the retirement age. It used to be 65, now it's 67. Maybe we'll move it back to 70, something like that. And we might do both to get it back to a sustainable level. So as it's currently constructed, what happens is you pay in over your lifetime, which for the average American is about 45 years. So you start working at age 22 and you claim at 67. That's 45 years of paying into Social Security. The average 67-year-old in America today will live to be 86 years old. So you collect for 19 years. Now, of course, each person is different. Some people live longer, some people live less. I'm talking about in aggregate, on average. You pay in for 45, you collect for 19. How much do you get versus how much you put in? Now, there's different reports and different ways to look at this. There's a lot of factors and different sliding numbers that you can do here, because are you looking at couples, are you looking at individuals, how much money did they make, when did they start working, all of those things. But it's somewhere between 10 to 15% to 2 times as much more than what you put into it. So for instance, if you put in $400,000, paid in $400,000 in Social Security taxes, you could be looking at anywhere from $450,000 to maybe $800,000 at the very, very high end in total lifetime benefits if you live to that average age, live 18, 19, 20 years in retirement. Again, if you live longer than that, you probably collect more. If you live Shorter than that, then obviously you would collect less. But that's how it looks in the aggregate. Now, that might sound good to say, oh, okay. And by the way, most reports targeted in on somewhere between 30 to 50% on average. So what you put in versus what you take out, you put in 400,000 in Social Security taxes, maybe you'll get a lifetime benefit of 500 to 600,000. So that might sound great. Like, hey, I'm getting $100,000 to $200,000 more back in benefit than what I paid in over my lifetime. The problem is, if you look at it a different way and think about, what if I took that 12.4% and instead that money was invested like in a 401k and I earned a modest rate of return, not like 10 or 12%. What if I earned like 6 or 7% on that money over that long period of time? Well, you're looking at that compound interest of those investments working out to something like $1.5 to $2 million, as opposed to the $500,000 to $600,000 of expected benefits. So when you look at it that way, it's like, oh wow, it's just not even close to the ROI that you would get through those other means. Now, in fairness to Social Security, it is not a one-to-one comparison. With Social Security, there are some other benefits built in, like spousal benefit and disability, and a payout to minors if you to your children if you die prematurely. But even with those considered, the point is this: because the current system is basically a redistribution system, it's not going to work as well. The math is just not going to be able to compound in the same way, because really all we're doing is just taking from this group and giving it to that group, and then when this group gets over there, we'll take from a new group and give to them. And it's not like, and just so you're aware, it's not like that money that you're paying in Social Security taxes is put into an account with your name on it. That's not what's happening here. It's not like your 401k where it's like, oh, hey, how much does Nate have in his Social Security account? No such thing. It truly is a redistribution system. And this is why I think the Freedom Fund offers a great alternative supplement. So in my opinion, I really don't think the best path forward will be to change Social Security, because Social Security, it would just be too difficult and too, I think, too cumbersome and too politically disadvantageous to mess with. Just to further beat home that point that I'm making about the unsustainability of Social Security, it used to be when Social Security was founded, there was 7 people paying in for every 1 person taking out. But because people are living longer now, and because we have this large generation of baby boomers who is coming through the system now, this abnormally larger generation of people born after World War II, we have a very large amount of people who are reaching that Social Security claiming age, who have paid into Social Security all these years and rightfully now expect to receive that benefit, that now the ratio is down to like 2.8 people working for every 1 person claiming. So that's not going to work. 3 people trying to support 1 person in retirement, and obviously you see that why that's not a sustainable system, and it's trending downward. It's not getting better. That ratio is not getting better. If anything, it's getting worse. So by the time you and I retire, I'm talking about like people that are kind of within my range, my age range. You may not be looking at 40% of your pre-retirement income. It might be closer to like 20 to 30%. So I think it's a good idea, and I've heard people talk about, hey, I'm just planning for retirement like Social Security is not going to be there. Sure, I think maybe as a mental exercise, you just don't even count on it. But also, I am optimistic that Social Security will be around. I definitely don't think that it's going to be gone, but it may not even have as much of a benefit proportionately for us in the future as it does now currently. So what is a better approach? Well, I firmly believe that investing and starting early and letting compound interest do its thing is the best way to build wealth and the best way to get us out of this current mess that we find ourselves in. There's something called the Rule of 72. I've talked about it before, but it just highlights the power of compound interest and the impact that it has over time. So with the Rule of 72, what you do is you take your rate of return, divide it by 72, and that will tell you how long it takes for your money to double. So if you have your money like in a high interest savings account, high yield savings account, or a certificate of deposit at the bank or a money market fund, and let's say it's paying 4% right now, how long would it take at 4% for your money to double? We'll divide it by 72, and the answer is 18. It takes about 18 years for your money to double. Well, at that pace, that's not going to be very good for you, because over the course of your working lifetime, you might only be able to double your money 2, maybe 3 times at that rate. So that's why when it comes to investing, you want to be looking towards more growth-oriented investments like stocks who have a higher expected rate of return. Historically, stocks have been between 8 to 11% over the long term. This is investing in a large, diversified set of stocks for many, many years, 20, 30, 40 years, 8 to 11%. So At let's just take 9%. At 9% rate of return, divide that by 72. That means your money would double every 8 years instead of 18. And that's a huge difference, because if you're 25 and you retire at 65, every 8 years your money doubling, that means you could double your money at least 5 times. But the other good news is that's only with a lump sum. That's like saying I'm starting with $10,000 and I'm not adding any money to it. But if you continue to add money to it, which is how most people invest for retirement through their Roth IRA, their 401k, they're putting money every paycheck into it, then it lowers the amount of years it takes for your money to double. So instead of every 8 years, it might be every 5 or 6 years. And the more times you can get your money to double, the closer you can get to that goal of really supplementing your income. Because think about it, early on, a double might not make a huge difference. If you double your money from 10 to 20,000, that's nice, but that's not life-changing money. Similarly, if you make 10% return on your money when you have $50,000, that's $5,000. Okay, it's nice, but that's not life-changing. But as you continue to double your money and that compound interest grows over time and you accumulate $500,000, $1 million, well then, if you earn 10% on $1 million, that's $100,000. Okay, now we're talking about some real impact there. And consequently, if we think about how many times we're doubling our money, the higher rate of return means more times to double our money. So for instance, if you started at let's say 25 verse 33, okay, just waiting 8 extra years to start saving for retirement, you're missing out on 1 extra double of your money. That's the difference between $1 million in retirement or $2 million in retirement. You see what I'm saying? Like, those impacts get felt way, way down the road. It's not really until the last 5 to 10 years of accumulation and investing that you really start to see that those impacts begin to magnify. It's that snowball rolling down the hill. For the first few feet, it doesn't make a huge difference, but by the bottom of the hill, it is turned into a massive, massive snowball. And so can we take this principle, this mathematical truth, this mathematical law of compound interest and building wealth slowly, and apply it to our retirement preparedness system? I think so. And here's how this would work, okay? Right now, the U.S. government currently offers a child tax credit of $2,000 a year. And I think this is where we need to start. What if there was a way that you could help people get started early, that you could help every American family set their kids up for financial success? And I'm talking regardless of their financial situation, right? Every family. You could alleviate a huge amount of stress that's on the Social Security system right now, and give every young person a far greater chance to retire successfully. Here's how we do it. So, like I said, child tax credit is about $2,000 a year. There's an income limit on this, but almost all American families qualify. You have to be earning a lot of money to not qualify for the child tax credit. So we're looking at probably about 95% of American families qualify for this tax credit. And what's happening is the government is basically indirectly paying American families $2,000 a year per child. So how that works is you do your taxes, and I just did my taxes here, and as the parent of 3 kids, I love the child tax credit, because let's say you owe $10,000 in taxes, but you have 3 kids, $2,000 each for the child tax credit. That means instead of owing $10,000, you now owe $4,000, because that credit offsets some of those taxes that you owe. So even though this is not a stimulus bill, this is not the government sending you a check or depositing money into your bank account, it works on an accounting side of things the same way. The government is giving that $2,000 benefit to each American family, and I think it's something that there would be a lot of bipartisan agreement on. That we like a program that is aimed to encourage and support families with kids. I think that's good. That helps us as a society, helps us to be stronger, and it helps us to set ourselves up for a better financial future. So I think the support for the child tax credit would be very, very high. If you poll Democrats and Republicans, do you like the child tax credit? I think almost everybody says, yes, that's a good idea and we should keep that. So if we're already doing something proactively as a government to benefit families with kids, what if we did this in addition? Okay, not instead. I think we should keep the child tax credit, but what if we did this as well? Every American kid receives $1,000 a year deposited into what we call a Freedom Fund. And if you have a different name for it, I'm open for suggestions. I'm partial to the Freedom Fund name, but call it what you want. $1,000 a year into this account, and it functions just like a retirement account. You take the money and then you can then invest it. The parents or the guardians, of course, would make those decisions for the child while they're a minor, but they could put it in a mutual fund. You can put it in a target date portfolio that is growth oriented and then gets more conservative as you move closer to retirement. But you begin investing that money. It's a little seed, and each year $1,000 goes into it every year that child, for every year that child is still under, you know, it still qualifies for that for the first 18 years. And then, by the way, if you're concerned, with the child tax credit, you're like, okay, well, Nate, but now's not the time to start doing more spending to like put out more benefits if anything we need to be cutting. Okay, fine. Split the difference with the child tax credit. Make the child tax credit $1,000 for each kid and then $1,000 into the Freedom Fund, and then we're not spending any more money. I'm fine with that. But here are the rules. In order to make this work, there has to be some concrete rules about the Freedom Fund. The account belongs to the child. This is not in the parent's name. It will only ever be for the child. So this is not something that you transfer to another person. It's in your name for your lifetime. And you cannot, this is a really important part, you cannot withdraw from it until you reach Social Security claiming age. So let's put that at 62. No early withdrawals, not for buying a house, not for medical emergency, not for college. Even though those might be great reasons, feel like justified reasons, it's really important that we set this money aside. It's only for retirement, no exceptions. You have flexibility to choose the investments, the risk level. This is not the government choosing a fund for you. And you have the ability to add more money to the account if you want. So you're going to get a minimum of $18,000 in this account because it's going to be $1,000 each year until they're 18. But if the parent wants to put money in, the grandparent wants to put money in, if the child gets to be a teenager, they have a part-time job, they want to put more money into it, they certainly can, because it's going to turn into that much more of a benefit because of the exponential the exponential nature of compound interest over time. But let's just use the minimum. Let's just take a newborn that receives $18,000 by the time that they graduate high school. What could that money be turned into over time? Well, let's go with an average rate of return of 7%. I don't want to give like rosy expectations. I don't want to be like, well, if you get 12%, but because that might not be realistic. Okay, that'd be great, but let's use a more realistic number. So let's go with 7%. That $18,000 seed by age 72 would have grown into $778,000. That's huge. Now, over the long term, like I said, the stock market has returned between 8 to 11%. So let's go up 1 more percent. Let's go to 8%. Let's be on the lower end of that. Let's say you got an 8% return during that same period of time. By age 62, instead of $778,000, you now have $1.3 million. And if you put it back a few more years and say, I'm going to wait until age 67 to take that money out, now it's $2 million. And if you give it 3 more years, by age 70, it's $2.5 million. Think about how amazing this would be if every child 60 years from now had not only Social Security, because we're not doing anything with that, we're keeping Social Security, but $1 to $2 million in addition to that in their Freedom Fund. Like, how much more impactful would that be for Americans retiring and their retirement preparedness? And here's part 2 to this, and this is just something that is a little bit of a pet peeve of mine, but I would roll this into the legislation if you're talking to Senator Nate Skelly here and my proposed bill. Also, I really do think we should replace our wonky retirement account system with Freedom Funds. Right now, it's this layer of complexity that is so mind-bogglingly dumb right now that we have 401ks and 403bs and Roth IRAs and IRAs, and we have SEP and Simple and 457 and TSP, and nobody knows what the heck any of these things are and how they work, what the contribution limits are and the tax implications and what I can withdraw for early and what's the penalty. It's different for all of them, and it just... I'll give you an example that just makes me want to bang my head against a wall. So right now, once you turn 50, you can do a catch-up contribution. And that makes sense. I'm not necessarily against that. So like for regular accounts like a Roth IRA or a 401k, you have your regular contribution limit. But then once you hit age 50 or higher, then you can do a catch-up contribution. You can do even more each year as a contribution, because the idea is you want to be a little bit more aggressive for saving for retirement. Okay, cool. Well, then they just made this change in the law here recently where from age 60 to 63, there's an even higher contribution limit. And why ages 60 to 63? We just chose those years. And so now it's like, well, if you're 49, your contribution limit is this. But then if you're 50, your contribution limit is this. But then if you're 60, your contribution limit is this. But then when you get to 64, now your contribution limit is back down to this. And it's just like, who can even keep track of this? I can hardly keep track of it as a financial planner. I can't imagine how, just the average American feels. It's just so stupid. We just add layers of complexity, and it's just this thing that's wrapped in duct tape, and it's ridiculous. What we need to do is we need to simplify the retirement account system, and we need to just go to the Freedom Fund. You have one Freedom Fund. That is your retirement account. You don't have to, and by the way, why should you be able to put more into your retirement account because your company that you work for happens to offer you a 401k, but then if you work for this company over here, they don't have a 401k, so all you can do is just a regular IRA or Roth IRA, but the 401k allows you to put 3 times as much money into it as your Roth IRA does. It's just, it's ridiculous. And also, by simplifying it and having one type of account that everybody uses, and there's no more like 403b and TSP and all of that, I think more people would use them because there wouldn't be nearly as much intimidation. People wouldn't be nearly as confused about how it all works. And the Freedom Fund stays with you, and that's a really big part of this. Part of the problem why people have such a difficult time keeping up with their retirement accounts is because over time, as they work for different employers, they rack up different retirement accounts. I have this 401k with this company and this 401k with this company, and in between that time, I had this IRA, and then if I start my own company, now I have a solo 401k because of this. And it's just like by the time you get ready to retire, you have 4, 5, 6, 7 different retirement accounts that you've accumulated, and you can't even keep track of them, and you try to combine them and consolidate them and roll them over, and people lose track of them. Sometimes people even forget about accounts that they had. It's ridiculous. One Freedom Fund starts with you as a kid, and it goes with you all the way through. And no matter what job you work at, no matter whether you're self-employed or unemployed, you can contribute into that Freedom Fund. The contribution limit stays the same. If you're working at a company, they can set up a direct deposit to go into your Freedom Fund, maybe offer you a match. But other than that, it just simplifies the system so much more. And then that Freedom Fund grows more over time because you're not just starting with an $18,000 seed as a kid, but you're contributing to it regularly as you're working. So we're not talking about just $1 to $2 million with that seed of 18,000. We're talking about several million because of all the money that you would have put in over the course of your working life and how that would have built up over time. So as you can tell, I'm a little bit fired up, or hopefully you can tell I'm fired up about this idea. The key here is that the best and most effective way to prepare Americans for retirement is we have to build wealth slowly, and we have to let compound interest double our money many times over. And the best way to do this is to start as soon as possible. And the soonest possible is when the kid is born. So we just want to get on that right away. And we're already allocating money. This is not like this is some new novel idea that we've never thought of before, like, oh, giving money to families and allocating money per kid. No, we already do this through the child tax credit. It's already built into our system. Why not just restructure it in a way that will be exponentially more impactful over the span of our kids' lifetime? And then while we're at it, it would be nice if we just simplify our retirement system and take out a lot of the unnecessary complexity and all of that. But I'm curious to know, what do you think? Do you like this idea? Do you think there's anything different that we can be doing to help Americans retire successfully? And if you like this Freedom Fund idea, please share this with somebody that you know. Would love to get this idea, get it some momentum, get it out there into the zeitgeist, as they say. And also, if you happen to know a congressman or a senator, hey, you might want to share this with them too. So thanks for listening as always, and I will see you on the next episode.